I started putting this together last night. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly, but it indicates how our city is budgeting, how our city handles money, and it relates specifically to you as a homeowner if you happen to be caught up in one of the special standards districts that, or the benefit assessment districts that the city's decided that they want to grab a little money from. So right now the city, every year we hear, oh my God, how wonderful we are. We have our budget on time, it's balanced. What does it include? And so you start to look at it and say, what does that really mean? What does it really mean to have a balanced budget? And they have a few techniques as a municipality that you don't have personally. So they can handle some of their anticipated debt or some of their liabilities if it was a company a little differently than a business would or so forth. So it just simply means that they are going to plan not to spend more money than they take in, even though there may be an anticipation that they may have to at some time in the future. So who determines all this stuff? And that's part of the reason I got interested in this in the first place. Is it really the city council that makes these decisions, or is it the city staff that makes the decision, just puts it in front of the council? And if you remember, we talked about the situation that was occurring with the open space district, and Marcia said, well, I just look at what the staff brings to me and I approve it. And that's pretty much what the situation is. It is the staff that makes the decision. And I don't really believe that the council truly understands what's being put in front of them when they have a budget. I've gone through a lot of it. I'll tell you where I can't see any visibility. I have had meetings with Mr. Striplin about others, and we'll talk about exactly what that means. So if you go through this yearly budget system with the city, you'll start out at their first meeting where it's right after the first of the year, and they may be talking about what they're going to do. They have a dinner meeting. You can go watch them eat dinner, and the city manager will come up and he will give a summary of what he intends to do. And then later on in the year, you might see scheduled budget subcommittee meetings. And I've gone to a few of those, and they typically are discussions about a specific project between the city manager and a council person. And there's really, if you are not intimately familiar with what they're talking about, you won't. It's just there while two people have a discussion. And then finally, at the end of this, they have another dinner meeting so you can watch them eat dinner the second time. And they do the same thing. And then they go around and talk about how wonderful everybody did. Goes to the city council, and there's a staff presentation, which is basically this overview again. Remember that their fiscal year is July 1st through June 30th. So in the mid-year budget adjustment, which comes in December, it's typically a consent calendar item, which means they won't discuss it unless somebody brings an issue up. It's not very descriptive. Sometimes it hides things, and by not being descriptive. You know, you can hide things in plain sight if you know what you're talking about and you describe them in a way that it's pretty much that someone else won't know what you're talking about. Council always seems to approve it, and then this whole nonsense starts all over again the next year. Realize the city of Santa Clarita has two different kinds of money. Remember, they're a general law city. They cannot tax you. They can create special benefit districts, but they cannot create taxes. The county, on the other hand, can. They have some discretionary funds, like the money that goes in the general fund, that either comes from property tax or sales tax or wherever it comes, and they divide that up between what they call the general fund and the facilities fund when they're budgeting, but it's all the general fund when they're reporting, because they use different accounting systems when they report and when they budget. Any fund in their discretionary funds, any fund that has discretionary money in it, or any fund like that can be established by council authority. It holds the money. They can change where they're going to spend it at any time they wish. It's truly discretionary. But there's also some non-discretionary funds. Those are Proposition 218 benefit assessment districts. In a benefit assessment district, you as the property owner have approved what they're about to do, and they take that money out of your property taxes. You might notice that when you go, I just got my property tax bill again, and if you look down through it, you'll see things like the open space district. You might be in a landscape maintenance district. You might be in a drainage benefit assessment district. Those are all special benefit assessment districts that the property owners at one point in time voted on. There's other special districts, such as one which is the largest one on my property tax bill, which is the sanitation district. That is a different type of district. It's formed a different way. And that money can only be spent in the sanitation district, supposedly. Then there's also grants. They might receive a grant from the state or from some other organization like the one of the mountain conservancies, and there's strings attached to what that money can be spent on, or agreements with some other governmental agencies. Can they cheat? Oh, absolutely they can cheat. They can find a legal sounding argument, and they did it in the Drainage Benefit Assessment District, where they said, you know what, we don't have enough money here, so we're going to move the pumping of water in the Shangri-La district to a landscape maintenance district. And why can we do that? Because Proposition 218 says that Proposition 218 districts can include water, the use of water and how water is used on the property. And that's absolutely true, but that's only true if it's part of the original agreement that you voted on. They can't add it. They really shouldn't add it later. But what happens is it comes out so innocuous it doesn't generate any traction, and they just do it. The other thing is what is meant by per year. So if your benefit assessment district says you can be raised $1 per year, and they say, well, yeah, that's true, but I didn't raise it for the last 5 years, so I'm going to go add those 5 years worth. Does it mean the current year or the cumulative year? And they've now made the decision, when they got away with it with the manufactured home, or they're doing this more and more where they're taking a cumulative number. They can change the benefit district definition, and they can combine districts over time. They were going to do that with the lighting district. There's two specifically different lighting districts in Santa Clarita. One that was formed before the city was a city, and one that was formed after. And if you go and you read the 2007 engineers report and read the 2018-19 engineers report, they sound very different because they're trying to combine those things. They tried to do that when with a vote, and they sent out some very deceiving information. And it finally got uncovered, and they dropped it. Silently, they can redefine the elements of the district. So, like, for example, on this, on the open space district, where they turned around and they said, you know what, guys, we're going to take this money and we're going to go spend it on in the facilities fund on the Canyon Country Community Center. And because we can spend money on parks. Well, I went on their website. There's no community centers in parks. But if you look at the new budget, you'll see that in unfunded items, they have something called Parks Active. And even though the community center is coded as a facility, in that one document, they call it an active park. And so I'll bet that's what they're going to come back and claim. So they can make it obscure enough that it does not rise to the level of being questioned legally, where none of the big guys want to take it on, like the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, where there's not many of you out there that are willing to go bombard City Hall. They can get away with it, and they do all the time. Have they ever lost? Absolutely. They lost on the special library tax. They were claiming that they were going to be able to do that. They wanted to fund the new hall library with it. But you know what? It said right in the resolution from the county, leave the district, you lose the tax, and they did. The lighting and landscaping district changes. They were telling people they were going to get refunds that they really weren't. And when that started to come out, they backed off and didn't do it. they tried to purchase open space land outside the district boundaries, which is illegal. They got caught, and what they did was they reallocated money. And now this thing of transferring dollars from the open space district to the general fund, that's kind of in process, and we're waiting for an answer from them. So if you go, you look at the budget is 307 pages. It's at a very high level. You can tell, like, for example, you can say, okay, I can see additional funding is being allocated to law enforcement or something like that, but there's very little visibility below major staff departments. So they say, I'm going to spend X amount of money in Parks and Rec. What's going to get spent in Parks and Rec is how many employees they have, what their employees do. You don't know. If you go look at their organization charts, they have no names on them. But I always went to the capital improvement program because the capital improvement program seemed to be a little more well-defined. And in it, there are a whole bunch of each capital improvement project is supposed to be coded to show the elements within it. So when we start to see how they fund this stuff, we can look at those. We supposedly can look at those improvement sections, and you can see it says these sections contain detailed information about the capital improvement projects, and it goes on and on and on to talk about how well they do. But you'll notice that every one of these pieces have a code, and you'll see part of the code where they define those projects, and they talk about appropriation of money and the category that the budget is divided in, but you really never see it at that level. What happened is they come out with this 5-year type of thing, and when you look at the 5-year type plan, this is their sample. Comes out of this year's budget. And you can see it's got a spread over 5 years. It's got money allocated in each one of the 5 years. It's got a cumulative amount of money. You would think this is a work plan, wouldn't you? You would think this is something that says, I'm going to spend X amount of money in this amount of time, and I should be able to come back to you and say, did you do it? Right? Well, that's wrong. It's not. Notice that there's nothing spent in prior years on this particular item. And so I just looked at it and said, God, that's a work plan. Here it is bigger. You can see there's nothing in prior years. And then you see all this spread out for the next 5 years. This is the sample. However, what happens is you're going to find out that you have to play in their sandbox. You have to use their terms. So does this really mean, does expenditures really mean money spent? If I say I expended an amount of funds, you would think that's money spent, wouldn't you? Isn't that what expenditures means? Not to the city. We'll get into it in a minute. If we said total costs means bottom line costs, right? That's it? What, total? No. You're going to find out that's wrong. And so look where it talks about defining the funding sources, and then down at the bottom they have something called unfunded. Now let's talk about how they really do it. This is the 1819 budget summary for the new sheriff station. And I took the sheriff station on because I just was curious about how much it was going to go cost. And I looked at it and it says, hey, look, let me see if I get it. Yeah, in prior years, we spent $16 million already. I'm watching them go ahead and great. I said, really? You spent 16? And this year, we're going to spend $204,000. I went, that just doesn't seem like the numbers balance. You got a lot of people working there. There's more than $204,000 being spent there, and that is because this is not a work plan. This is a money plan. When the city talks about it, I have it detailed more. I'll see if I can get to it by the end of the evening. When the city claims I have expenditures in the city's definition is money spent or already appropriated for that project. And so when I look at this, what this really means is that they have appropriated $16 million, not that they've spent $16 million, and they have planned to appropriate another $204,000 this next year. And by the way, that still leaves $39,300 that they don't know where it's going to come from because it's unfunded. So notice there's no money in 2021, and that's when this is supposed to finish, in 2021. And so you can see definitely it's not a work plan. And that's part of what we discussed. This is the 1920 sheriff's plan. And you can see here where it says prior years, $47 million. If you were looking at this as a work plan and say, wait a minute, you spent that much money in 1 year? You said you were only going to spend $204,000. Well, that's because it's not a work plan. And the total cost is $48,868. Is that really the total cost? No. So how does the yearly budget document represent the cost projected for the new sheriff's station? That was my challenge to the city. I didn't know how it was done. So I went to the city and I said, I bet you guys up there that are sitting there in the front row that approved this don't know how this works. Why don't you come down to the Canyon Country Advisory Committee and you explain it to us, right? And they just sat there and they looked at me. Well, no one called me. So at the next meeting, I said, guys, I'm not kidding. How about coming down and explaining it to us? And I got nothing. So at the next meeting, I came back and said, hey, Striplin, how about you coming down there, right? And Ken said, well, I'd be happy to sit down with you. No problem. Next day, I have a phone call. Let's set up a meeting. Let's talk about it, and let's get going. So the consensus of this, is that it is not a work plan, it's a funding plan. And the city's definition of expenditures is money spent or appropriated. Has nothing to do with the way that they're expending money. Money shown for the current year has been or will be appropriated during the period from a planned source. But if you'll notice that the samples said they were going to tell you where it comes from, but they don't tell you where it comes from in the real world, right? And the unplanned resources show costs estimated that have not yet been determined where they're going to get the money from. So they call those money that's been obligated. So if you look at the new sheriff station, that's exactly what you see. You see that what they've appropriated, their total cost is really how much the city cost is. How much money the city is putting in this project, not the total project cost. Because down at the bottom, because I had been hammering on this so long, this is the only project that for some strange reason has this little bit of information at the bottom. It says the total project cost of $67 million is funded by $48 million from the city, as well as $18 million from the county and $1.2 million from the federal drug forfeiture. So I said, wow, that's really interesting. So armed with this new information, because now I know what they're going to do, I decided to test it. Let's go and let's look at something else and see if it follows the same pattern. Well, what happened? I saw this in the paper. That's the community center down the street, and I thought, oh, that's nifty. Let me take a look at that and see if I can make the community center budgets look like or understand them based upon this new criteria that I know. Remember, the community center engagement was started in 2014. They got us all together. We did tours. We went to meetings. They find out what we wanted. When it didn't agree with what they thought we should want, they did it again in 2015 and 16. And we went through all this kind of nonsense. And now the future Canyon Country Community Center is going to include a gym. It's going to have computer technology, arts and crafts, community fitness rooms, open turf play area, outdoor spaces, play area, and a demonstration kitchen to be used for teaching. There's a rendering of what it's going to look like. And there's the footprint. Now notice here in the footprint that there's a section there, right here. See this section? Now, this looks like a parking lot because it shows, if you can see this a little bit clearer, you'll see that the parking spaces are lined up. What's this? That's the community garden that Lorraine wanted, and we kept saying we don't have enough parking. And they said, well, no, we're going to make it a parking lot. I guess it's become a community garden again. Anyway, it's divided up in 3 phases, and understanding what 3 phases was, I expected to go into the budgets and see the 3 phases. Phase 1 includes the improvements to the Mint Canyon Channel, storm drains, infiltration system, and rough grading of the site. So the rough grading, all that trenching you see being dug, that big thing that the guy was playing in is part of this infiltration system. That's interesting. Phase 2 includes building it, And phase 3 includes all the off-site improvements. Now the council approved this plan in 2016, and they completed all the environmental processes necessary. I'm giving you this heads up so you can see what happens when I get to the budget. Groundbreaking ceremony for phase 1 was in 2019, and phase 1 construction started in 2019 and is expected April and expected to take 10 months, which means that phase 1 isn't going to complete until 2020, which means the thing is not going to complete until at earliest 2021. So I guess they mixed their date. Phase 2 design, the design of phase 2 and phase 3 are approximately 90% complete. And then I discovered, I've heard about this, but I really didn't pay any attention. This, by the way, comes straight off of the city website. A public art piece titled Community was approved for the site. You guys all know what that looks like? You don't? What a surprise. The last people to talk to, people out here. The community is designed as an iconic gateway for the new community center. Unique, colorful oak tree will symbolize the strength of the community. It will be installed on the corner of Soledad Canyon, Sierra Highway. All right? It's going to have huh? It's going, no, it's not going to be a real tree. It's going to be a metal tree. Okay. All right? They awarded a contract to this guy for $121,000. Plus, they added 18% contingency. One of the things Ken Striplin said to me was, we never overrun our budgets. No, you always add a contingency that's unreasonable. We give you too much money and you make it. Big deal. So this unique, colorful oak tree with hundreds of colorful leaves of happy human forms and oak leaves made of stainless and acrylic, so we won't have to water it, plus historical text to be included in the roots. It's going to be 25, 27 feet in height, 16 to 19 foot span. So we took down that hideous looking billboard on the corner. We're going to put this up in its place. All right, construction of the phase 1 project is supposed to be completed in 2020. And so 1, 2, and 3 estimate take another 24 months. So you can tell it's not going to be done anytime soon. All right, here we go. FY 18-19, R307 is the infiltration system. They at that time they had appropriated $225,000. They plan to appropriate $1.3 million, and they said the total cost at that time was $1.56 million. Then they come up with the phase 1. I can't tell. Do you see anything that says phase on here? But it says design and permitting. Notice it's coded as a facility with an F code. None of those special codes are, well, no, actually they do have some funding in here. They do say they're going to take money from the open space district, $2 million. And what it does is it says now that they've appropriated $10 million. They have plan to appropriate another $500,000, and the total cost is going to be $11.5 million in total. So when you add the unfunded amount, which comes out of the unfunded in 18-19, you put this together, the total cost of this in money is $52 million. That's what they're going to spend on it. But now you go to next year's budget, and you see that in next year's budget for the infiltration system, they appropriated $1.56 million. They're appropriating another $1.6. So now the cost is $3.2 million. Isn't that twice what it was last year? And then for the building itself, they appropriated $21 million, and they're going to appropriate another $328,000 this year, bringing that part of the total cost to $22 million. And if you add this all up and add the unfunded capital of $36 million, took this right out of theirs, the total cost of the building is now $61 million. Gets a little more. So my questions are going to be to the council. I'm going to go ask them. I got one more week to go. What caused the increase of about $10 million? How come this total cost now is $10 million higher? Was there an element that you didn't include in the prior budget? I don't know. Why are the projects not shown in a more consistent? Why isn't this project shown the way the other one is? And Why is the example project not showing the past year's costs? In summary, it's really simple. I'm convinced I'm going to be told I'm wrong. Okay, no matter what I ask them, I'm going to be wrong. I can repeat back to them exactly the same words that they gave me 5 minutes later, and they'll tell me I'm wrong. Because when they own the secret rule book, they're always right. Doesn't matter. They're always right. But it's always kind of interesting to keep going for another round. So I plan to go for another round about that. Any questions really quick? Yes, sir.
So when funds are allocated in 1 year and they're not actually spent in that year,
yes,
those funds carry forward to the next year?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes. Actually, the money, the term that they would use would be appropriated. So when money is appropriated, it means that the council has approved its use on that project. They don't approve it for a specific year. They approve it as a lump sum for the project. Okay? If you have money that is obligated, that's money that they plan to appropriate, that they haven't appropriated. So they said, I need this, for some reason, I need this amount to be added to this total amount. And you would think that that meant that they'd spend it all, right? But that's not necessarily true.
So I'm wondering how consistent it's going to be. The trail going down Sand Canyon, we have fought for 20 years trying to get.
Yes.
We got $480,000 this year. We keep going back week after week. There's no plan of work. No work is being done. And I'm sitting here wondering what's going to happen at the end of the year. We're going to have to fight for that money all over again?
No. Is it in the capital improvement program? I'll look for it. You give me make sure to give me your number. I will look for it in the capital improvement program, and I will tell you if what it says as far as that's concerned. Okay? All right. So the open issues, the solar panels on Soledad, the court date, which was we've been waiting for a year, which was going to be October, is now in December. The Open Space Benefit Assessment District meeting has not yet been scheduled. We're almost ready to come out with a new budget, and we don't know what happened last year. And I'd really like to, just for the heck of it, know what happened to the savings that they were supposed to generate by taking over the library, and what happened to the savings that they were supposed to accumulate by the streetlight conversion to LEDs. When are they going to return that to the community? We'll see what happens.